Good evening. My name is Don Davis, and I want to welcome you back to another session of Unchained Hope and Healing from Addiction. Last night I just enjoyed our session so much with Christy and her story of her journey. And, everyone has been just special in what they've shared, what they've been through, just being real people telling real stories. And so we're just glad that you could join us again this evening. If you haven't registered, we want to encourage you to do that. And you might say, well, what do I get by registering? Do I get any free merch or anything like that? Well, what we'll do is we'll go and alert you and remind you about upcoming special Unchained events. In fact, our originator, our founder of Unchained, Richie Halverson, is going to be with us in September at a live event here in Spartanburg. We want to let you know so that you and your family and your loved ones, others that might be battling addiction, can come and meet Richie in person. So if you go and register at the site there that's listed on your screen, we'll be able to keep you informed and up to date on when Richie will be here, and I just hope that you can be a part of that as well. Also, we want to encourage you, if you haven't done so already, to go and take and use the text at the bottom of your screen to go and be able to go and win a free copy of Richie's book, Darkness Will Not Overcome. And if you go and just text Unchained to the number there, 534-444-7183, we'll put you in the running for the drawing, and hopefully you can be able to win this copy. We want to give away a copy every night. And so if you can do that, you'll have a very good chance of being able to win Richie's book, which will be an encouragement in not only for you, but maybe some friends and family as well. If you haven't done so, speaking of friends and family, please reach out. Please go and text them and encourage them to go and join Unchained. We still have a number of nights. We'll be going every night until Saturday night, and we hope that you can join us for each session, and hope that it will be a blessing to you as people share real principles from their lives, as well as Richie sharing insights from God's Word as well. Tonight, we have a special guest with us, and I want to introduce you to her. I had the opportunity of getting acquainted with her prior to going on camera, and I'm excited to hear her story, and I hope you are as well. So I want to welcome this evening Audrey Colleen. And Audrey, we're just glad that you could be able to take time out of your busy schedule to be able to be with us here at Unchained.
Oh, absolutely. I am happy to do it and grateful for the opportunity.
So can you tell us a little bit about your position, what you do, and also we'd like to hear a little bit about your journey as well. So can you tell us what you do currently, and then kind of walk us back through what you've been through over the years?
Absolutely. So I am a senior program coordinator for the Recovery Services Department at the Forrester Center. And so I lead a team of amazing people who some of them have been here sharing with you, but it's just so awesome to be a part of that and be a part of inspiring so many others to get the help that they need.
Well, we're glad that you could be with us, because I know a number of special people that we know that you have had a definite impact on as well, so we want to thank you. Tell us a little bit about how your own journey in terms of addiction. How did it all first start? I mean, obviously everybody has a slightly different story, but how did things unfold for you?
Well, I was raised in a Christian home. We did have some tragedy strike when I was early. Like, I was 4 years old when I lost my father and separated from my mom for a little while. But I was always taken to church, and my first lesson in faith really was my grandparents teaching me that prayer works, and prayer did work for some amazing results to come through when I was just 11 years old. But I faced a lot of brokenness, emotional brokenness, mental brokenness, because of the things that I had been through.
Yeah, losing your father so early, right? So young.
Yeah, absolutely. And So I did really well in school. Very easy came the high grades, honors, and all that. But I always say the emotional intelligence just wasn't quite there because I had a gaping hole within me that just could not be filled.
Mm.
So the first time that I tried alcohol, it was like, oh wow, I've arrived. This that filled the hole.
So how old were you when that happened, that first experience?
I was about 16. I had like taken a couple of sips before that, like 13, but not in a situation where I was with friends.
Okay.
So that just changed everything for me. And pretty quickly, I racked up some consequences. Mainly, nothing like big. I got arrested in Clemson when we went to a party, and that got squashed, right? So, and then I went to Clemson, and I dropped out my first year because I was in an environment where partying was the thing to do, and that's what I did.
So that's kind of typical in many college settings, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's like you live for the weekend, if and maybe not even get to the weekend, or you'd be partying throughout the week as well,
Yeah.
right?
And that was me.
Okay.
And I did it longer and more than anyone else around me. And I always think most likely they weren't trying to fill a void in their life. I was.
So you're trying to deal with the pain in your life, right? Growing
Yes.
up. So
Yes, absolutely. And just things that happen as a teenager. We take pretty hard hits even as teenagers, and especially in today's world. So I drank and used drugs at it.
right. Yeah, just trying to figure out who we are at that age, right?
Yes.
You know, so that's a difficult thing to navigate, that's for sure. So you're at Clemson, and you're kind of like probably the one that was in the forefront of partying throughout the time that you were there, and then you end up leaving there. So what happens next after leaving Clemson? So
Well, I already had a boyfriend, which was kind of an instigator, and we didn't help each other. We partied more because we encouraged each other to do so, and so I had a trust fund from where my father had passed away, and I tried college in several different places, but everywhere I went, there I was. So my partying only got worse, and I would register for college. I had an uncle who was like over my money, and I would tell him I've registered. Can you pay the bill? Then I would drop out. And I share that because I did a lot of things to manipulate to make sure I had money to, and I worked also, but I was supporting more than just my habit. And he has passed away, but I went to make amends with him, and those are the things that hurt. I hurt my family. Skipping through a few years and very bad relationships and domestic violence, mutual abuse type thing, and I found myself in Charlotte, North Carolina, homeless. Granted, my parents have a home, so my mom had remarried when I was a teenager.
Sure.
I have great parents. They are great. And, but they didn't support my lifestyle, and I honestly thought that they hated me, right? So I had begun to take on this identity of I'm broken, I'm damaged, I'm no good, and I might as well just live that way.
And so your parents also just out of tough love were kind of having to draw a line. Is that right?
They did. They did have to set some pretty hard boundaries. I could only imagine. I can't imagine, actually. And but they did it, and I led to Charlotte led to Miami, and I was homeless in Miami. I was hoteling in Miami, and all the things that happens to people when they, especially women, when they are in active addiction. And so I had been trafficked in Charlotte, and once that happened to me, all the damage that I thought I had never mattered anymore. And so I thought, this is the rest of my life, and I'll die trying. And I had this moment in Miami after some years. This would have been 2006. and I was behind an abandoned building. It was so hot. It was like towards the end of June, and I just had this prodigal moment where it just occurred to me, why are you doing this? And
Sure.
I didn't stay sober all those years. Recovery is not something that I just got one time and that was it. But I did have a year in recovery in Miami, and then I got pregnant with my first child, which changed everything for me. It didn't fix me though, right? So I came back home to Greer, and she was born 3 months later. My parents had invited me back into their home, which is a miracle in and of itself.
Sure.
But I was so broken. I was so broken, and I had no support other than my parents. But this type of support needs to come not just from your family. You need to have other people to kind of help walk you through it, other people who love you unconditionally besides your family.
So I was curious about that because, I think as obviously many families today may have someone, I mean, most all of us have someone that we know, right, that's addicted to something,
absolutely.
either substance-wise or behavioral addiction, right? So what can families do? I mean, now, obviously, looking back on it, you might be able to have a different read on it than what you did when you had your daughter, but how does that work, as far as being able to go and help, when you're a family member?
Well, families need support as well. And there are resources in the community, not just like in churches, which this is awesome that you guys are doing this, by the way. But Favor has family coaches. The family needs support. The individual needs support so they can all work together to pull the person out, because it takes a lot of effort and a lot of work.
So we can't do it by ourselves, right?
Right.
So,
No.
so you're at home, back at mom and dad's, have your little one. So what happens next?
I shared my testimony a lot, and life was good. It was hard at night when I closed my eyes. A lot of trauma. But I got married, and that was a terrible idea. And so, unfortunately, I never really recuperated from that well. And I returned to use when my daughter was 3. And that was terrible for me, for her, for my parents, for everyone that knew me, for everyone that had ever loved and cared about me, because my use, my addiction was just ravaging. Like I had never stopped. They said that, like, you pick back up where you left off, or even worse than it was. But the beautiful thing is that immediately, almost, God provided somebody. We didn't actually live right at the time, but he's my husband now, and he has saved my life more than once. And so we have 2 kids together, and I did not stay in recovery the whole time, even through that. And so I've had 2 DSS cases where I had to fight to get them back. This last time that I lost them, I also landed myself back in jail for like the 50th time, probably literally the 50th time. And I remember hitting my knees April 30th, 2014, and saying, God, I don't know if you're going to let me be their mom, but just use me so that you can get glory from my life, because what I've been doing, everything I've tried isn't working, and I don't understand. I had a relationship with you. What happened? And I said, if I have to go to prison, can you use me in prison? But if you let me be their mom, I will fight for their soul and their life as long as I have breath. And from that day on, doors just opened. A drug court attorney came to see me, and within 2 months, I was out. I was staying at Angel's Charge. I had perfect strangers in my life, a lot of strangers in my life, all pouring into me. And I was able to mend the relationships with my parents who never gave up on me. I'm their only child, right? So I know that that was terrible for them as well. Especially they were taking care of my oldest daughter, and my other two were in different places. But God also used that, and I have more support even as a parent now, and I still share my kids because that's what God told me to do. So I went through drug court, 12-step program, and I graduated and had a lot of trauma therapy, but I really formed this relationship with Jesus, and I read the Bible with new eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I had read it before, but I read it with new eyes. I read it with eyes that were humbled, and there was nowhere to go but up for me. I felt like I'm sure I could have dug a bottom out again, and I still could, but not, but God, right?
Right.
And everything just really began to fall together, and I was able to get my kids back. My husband and I, we got married, and then I moved back with him. And 3 years later, I had already graduated. In 2017, I called a counselor. My drug court counselor was like, "Oh my goodness, I cannot work in this restaurant anymore. How do I go to school?" She offered me a job at the Forrester Center.
Wow.
And I was the first peer there, first peer support, and now there's 10 of us. So the program has grown. It's all over the place, but the real work, really, like I said about laying down at night, closing my eyes, the hard work is there. Is being able to lay my head down with who I was that day. And I don't always do everything right, but this time I can forgive myself, right? If I don't make the right decision, or I'm not as kind as I should be, I can forgive myself, which is hard
Yeah,
sometimes.
well, I think the thing is that when we think about all of our experiences, whether we've, regardless of what kind of addiction we're dealing with, right? There's no one human being that's perfect, right?
Right.
We're all damaged in some way, and there's only one that we know is perfect. So, but still trying to be able to go and accept that. I mean, that's obviously, it's a journey to accept that we're not all perfect in and of ourselves.
Right.
So
Absolutely. I think I knew I wasn't perfect before, and I still know that I'm not. But I can still be very hard on myself and perfectionistic, which isn't good. That
Sure.
isn't of God either. So I have to have people in my life to tell me, hey, that's not quite right, what you're thinking about yourself. You're not that. You're not a horrible person. Or just let it go, and just let it go.
yeah, I know. A number of years ago, I heard a person, they said, well, we do the best that we can, and then God makes it the difference. And I said, well, that's not what the Bible tells us. It's God's grace has to cover everything. We have to be covered like an umbrella because, we all are, we all have our struggles, our issues, right?
That's right.
So, well, I'm just curious, now that obviously, you've been brought along, that the Lord has brought you to where you are, how are you be able to go and use your experience to go and help others? I mean, I think you mentioned about Forrester Center and peer counseling and support. I mean, what does that really look like for, in terms of what that means, I guess, what does that mean?
Well, I never thought the day I would ever see a time where I could look back on every experience that I'd ever had and be grateful for it. I will always be remorseful for the things that I did to hurt people, but everything that I did made me who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I consider cross from both men and women, but especially women, and anything they could have done or been through. I've just about been through similar.
Sure.
And there is something magical, something spiritual that happens when you can sit across from a mom who hates themselves because their kids have been removed and say, I remember what that was like for me.
Mm-hmm.
And the walls come down and you can get through. It doesn't mean they change overnight. It doesn't mean that it always works. But that's just one example of how I can relate to people and also encourage others to relate to people and ignite change.
Yeah, I mean, God has used you in a tremendous way. I know, like I was saying, I kind of was doing a little bit of checking in how what you're doing, what you've done, and it's just been amazing because you have had many experiences to be able to share your story, not just with people one on one, because you've been doing that, but you've also been doing it on television, in newspapers. I mean, just about every venue possible. Even saw your name and your face on MUSC, Medical University of South Carolina as well. And I just think, God has turned your life around. He's really created multiple miracles in your life
Yes,
to be able to do what you're doing right now.
absolutely. And still today, still today, there's one of my favorite songs that Elevation Worship has is "A Million Little Miracles," and absolutely, that's me. Probably a million every single day new ones because, like you said, grace covers me. Mercy is a real thing, and His protection, His favor, His covering. Um, it's really humbling to think where I used to be seems kind of surreal now because it's been 10 years and um, I have a degree now. I'm going to go on to get a master's, so it seems a little surreal. But when I revisit that last night that I went to jail, or I revisit that sorrow and that loss, not for to dwell in it, not to, feel guilty and shameful, but out of gratitude.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the thing is that we all have that opportunity, whatever our story is. I mean, that's the thing that's unique to each one of us, right? Telling our story, sharing it, and I think that's the thing where it's we can be able to go and bring hope, bring light to somebody else, and I mean that's a tremendous opportunity and responsibility too, just to be able to do that. Wherever God leads, to be able to go and hope, help someone else, help lift them up, and help them to see that there is hope beyond their immediate situation. So,
Absolutely.
well, Aubrey, I just want to thank you for sharing. We're going to come back and go over some questions that folks will have here in a little bit. If you have a question that you'd like to be able to go and share with Aubrey and ask, please do that in the chat or just even text it if you'd like to go and make a special anonymous question. We'll welcome that. So just text your questions, put them in the chat. Either way, we'll be able to go and post those and pose those, rather, to Aubrey at the end of our session here this evening. Right now, we want to go and hear another presentation by Richie Halverson and just be able to understand a little bit more from the Gospel of John. And I have appreciated Richie's unique looks at some of those stories and how they bring hope and healing to our lives as we battle addiction.
Welcome to Unchained, Hope and Healing from Addiction. The only way I was able to break through the chain that held me back was when I finally was willing to admit, you know what, I don't have all the answers. What I was doing wasn't working. And so I had to start listening to other people who knew things that I didn't know. I knew how to get high, but I didn't know how to get clean. I had to take the cotton out of my ears and I had to put it in my mouth. I remember I had someone at a meeting who told me very quickly early on, I was talking a lot because I had read a lot and I thought I knew a lot. And one of these old timers, is what we called them, told me, Richie, shut up, take the cotton out of your ears and stick it in your mouth. You see, I had to be willing to learn something new from someone else. I had to stop acting like I was charged. I needed someone bigger, better, smarter, stronger than me to be in charge. In the book of Mark 5:22, we have an interesting story of someone who was used to being in charge. Jairus was one of the synagogue presidents, it says. He was used to being the leader. He was used to doing all the talking. But if you want to live an unchained life, you have to be willing to let someone else be in charge. You've got to be willing to listen to someone else sometime. In Mark 5:23, Jairus comes up to Jesus. He says, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come, lay hands on her so that she may be made well and live." So check this out. Jairus is telling Jesus how to heal his daughter. But Jairus doesn't know how to heal people. Jairus doesn't know how to perform miracles. Just like I didn't know how to stay clean, Jairus doesn't know what he's talking about. So in Mark 5:22, when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. So he's kneeling. He seems to be kind of praying. He's open to the eye of giving up control. But the very next verse, he starts ordering Jesus around. Have you ever used prayer to try to order God around? Have you ever tried to tell someone else what they need to be doing in their life? In recovery, we say, don't give advice. Advice kills. We only share experience, strength, and hope. People don't need advice. They need to hear that you got through something, and they need to hear hope of how they can get through something. We got to be willing to listen to someone else. What does Jairus know about healing? What do you know about living unchained? Before Jesus can give Jairus what he's asking for, Jairus has to let go of the control and give it over to God. Now compare Jairus' request to this centurion who also is asking Jesus to heal someone. Luke 7:7-8. It says, "I did not presume to come to you, but say the word, Jesus, and let my servant be healed. For I too am a man set under authority with soldiers under me, and I say to one, go, and they go, and to another, come, and they come, and to my servant, do this, and he does it." The centurion was a good leader because, you see, he knew how to be led. Before you can ever lead, you got to first learn how to be led. In spite of Jairus, Jesus still goes with him. Man, I am so glad, in spite of some of the dumb things that I've said, I've had good friends who've still been willing to go with me. In spite of our problems, our big egos, in spite of the incessant fighting and debating, Jesus still goes. Instead of telling Jairus, Jesus is going to show Jairus. Some of us, we only learn by being shown. We can't take someone's word for it. We've got to experience the pain for ourselves. Mark 5:25, there was a woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 years. So here we have another character come into the scene. On the way to Jairus' house, something is getting in the way of Jairus' plan. Man, we hate it when things get in the way of our plans, don't we? But sometimes interruptions are interventions. Sometimes the thing that we think is getting in the way is actually the best possible thing that could happen for us. Man, I can see Jairus pushing Jesus with one hand, come on, Jesus, I got to get you going where I'm going, and he's batting people away with the other hand. Jesus is in a hurry, and it seems like Jesus is taking his time. I wonder, has God ever seemed to take his time in your life? Maybe he's trying to teach you something. Maybe he's trying to show you something. And so this woman in Mark 5:28, she says, if I can just touch his robe, I will be healed. The Greek word for healed means rescued. You see, God wants to rescue you from what's killing you. God wants to rescue you from whatever is draining you. In Mark 5:26, this woman had suffered much under many physicians. She had spent all she had and was no better. Rather, she grew worse. So think about it. She had tried all kinds of things. I know for me, man, I had tried all kinds of things to quit using opioids. I tried a lot of things to quit all kinds of addictions and to live an unchained life. This woman has tried all kinds of things, but instead of it getting better, it's only growing worse. She had plenty of people's opinions. She had plenty of treatment options. Her purse was full of prescriptions, but she's still bleeding. She's still not enjoying life. Think of all the stuff this woman had to push through to get to Jesus. Man, she had to push through the people telling her it was all in her head. She had to push through all the people who said, you know what, once an addict, always an addict. She had to push through all the critics and the naysayers and the haters. She had to push past the internal voice that says, you're always going to be this way. You're a mess up. You will never live an unchained life. She had to push past the toxic voices in her life. If I can just reach out and touch him, I'll be healed. If I can just tap into something stronger than me. And so she comes up behind him. In the crowd, she touches his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. Check it out. Jesus was able to stop the bleeding no one else could stop. Jesus could fix a problem no one else could fix. You see, we cannot fix our own problem because we are a part of the problem. If we want to live an unchained life, we've got to tap into something stronger than we are. I can't, he can. I think I'll let him. And Jesus realized at once that the healing power had gone out of him. And so he turned around in the crowd and asked, who touched my robe? And the disciples are like, well, what? I mean, Jesus, you see this crowd crushing you and you ask who touched me? But check this out. Jesus knows the difference between someone putting their hands on him to push him or a need that pulls him. And this is why I believe when something pulled at him, instead of pushing him, it changed his direction. You see, that's what separated the woman from Jairus. You see, the woman's need pulled Jesus. Jairus was trying to push Jesus. In John 10:18, Jesus says, look, no one takes my life from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down and authority to take it up again. You see, friends, it wasn't the push that put Jesus on the cross. It was his love for us that pulled him there. Stop letting people and problems push you around. Stop letting addiction push you around. Stop letting other people decide what is best for your life. Stop chaining yourself to that toxic relationship. Stop letting them push you and let God pull you into your purpose. Man, in the massive crowd, Jesus can discern one touch. God can feel your loneliness in a crowded room. He can see your brokenness in a broken world. He knows what's draining us, and if we would just reach out and touch him, he'll stop the bleeding. And so Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Meanwhile, I imagine Jairus just kind of looking at his watch. What are you doing, Jesus? Man, I've got something to do. I'm important. This woman had a bleeding problem, which meant, according to that custom, that Jewish custom, she would have been ceremonially unclean. She was unclean. She shouldn't touch Jesus. No doubt, Jairus, being a president of the synagogue, hey, you don't have time to mess with that unclean person. I'm important. The woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling, and she fell down before him and told him the whole truth. Check it out. It says the whole truth. Remember, Jairus is in a hurry. The Greek word for whole truth means everything. She tells Jesus everything, every detail. She's been sick for 12 years. She tells the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. She tells Jesus every detail. Jairus is tapping his foot, but you see, Jesus will not be pushed around. And while this woman is testifying, Jairus' daughter is dying. I don't have time for this, he probably thought. But you know what? I've discovered in life, it's not all about me. It's not all about what I want. At the core of addiction is selfishness. It's not all about you. It's not all about me. You know, sometimes we act like we're the only people with problems. Sometimes we act like we're the only ones that need help. You know, my sponsor once told me in recovery, he said, Richie, I know it may look like the sun rises and sets over your head, but you are not the center of the universe. You see, Jesus is going to deal with Jairus' problem, but he's going to deal with this woman's problem along the way. Jesus is on his way to deal with your problem, but one of the ways he's going to deal with your problem is by dealing with someone else's problem along the way, because your greatest problem is not what you think it is. Your greatest problem, my greatest problem, it's me. And nothing gets me out of me quicker than helping someone else. And we're going to talk about this more in session 9. But to God, no one is more important than anyone else. I don't care the person living up under the bridge or the person in the house with a 5-car garage. No one's more important than anyone else. No one's problems is more important than anyone else. The nameless, unclean Gentile woman is just as important to Jesus as the famous Jewish male leader. You know, too often like Jairus, we want to tell God what he's going to do, how he's going to do it, and when he's going to do it. But that doesn't work. That's a part of the problem. We're trying to be God instead of letting God be God. Before Jesus can heal his daughter, Jesus has to heal Jairus. Mark 5:35, as he said this, some people arrived from the synagogue, the president's house. Your daughter is dead, they said. Why bother the teacher anymore? And so that small glimmer of hope leaves Jairus' eyes. In that moment, he realizes just how small he really is. And that, my friends, is when Jesus can really help him. Sometimes we've got to get knocked off our high horse. Sometimes, we've got to just hit that bottom. Sometimes we've got to fall down for God to finally be able to get through to us. Mark 5:36. But overhearing what they said, Jesus said to the ruler of the synagogue, do not fear, only believe. Interestingly, the Greek word for overhearing means refused to listen or ignore. Check that out. Jesus ignores what the people say. He looks right into Jairus' hopeless eyes and he says, do not fear, only believe. I don't care what anybody else thinks. God is ignoring the skeptics. He's ignoring the critics, and he's looking at you. Do not fear, only believe. They're not in charge. I am. So the moment we stop limiting God by what we can do, we can start seeing what God can do. 1 Corinthians 2:9 says, no eye has seen, nor ear heard, nor the heart of man imagined what God has prepared for those who love him. Ephesians 3:20 says, God is capable of doing far, far more than we could ever ask or imagine. You see, Jairus came to Jesus for healing, but Jesus was planning something better. Jesus wasn't just planning on a healing. Jesus was planning a resurrection. Man, God's plans for us are always bigger than our plans for us. God's idea for an unchained life, living freely and abundantly, is always bigger. When my first year clean, my sponsor told me to write down all the things I wanted to see, all my plans and goals for living my first year clean. He says, Richie, write down everything that you want to see happen, and I promise you, God's going to blow your expectations to smithereens. Because to be honest, I just wanted to hold a job. I just wanted to get a job. I just didn't want to go away to prison. I started making that list. In a year, when I hit that year mark, man, not only did I have a job, I had my family back. I had my relationships were started flourishing again. I started serving in my community. I got so many more things. God's plans for you are always bigger than your plans for you. Mark 5:38, they came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue, and Jesus saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. And when he had entered, he said to them, why are you making a commotion and weeping? The child's not dead, but sleeping. And check it out, they laughed at him. Has anyone ever laughed at you? When the scoffers come between Jesus and his miracle, it says that he kicked them out. Whatever is coming between you and your miracle, let God kick it out. Verse 40 says, he put them all outside and took the child's father and mother and those who were with him and went in where the child was. In ancient Israel, they actually hired mourners, which means many of these people mourning weren't really upset. They were paid to be upset. And that's why they go from crying one moment to laughing the next. You know, there are people in your life who will go from patting you on the back one moment to stabbing you in the back the next moment. And look, I believe in being kind to everyone, but my inner circle is saved for those who want to see God do a miracle. My inner circle, the people that I'm going to spend the most time with, are going to be the people that want to see me succeed, that believe in me. It's time to kick all the fake, pretentious people out of your life because they are coming between you and your miracle. Jairus and his wife are totally overwhelmed by grief. They still can't believe that their little girl is gone. But then she encounters Christ and they find out that death is nothing more than a sleep when it comes to God. Mark 10:27 says, all things are possible with God. Where there is Jesus, there is always a way. Don't ask for a little help. You need more than a little help. All of us do. We don't need help. We need the hand of God to change us, to free us. Mark 5:41, taking her by the hand, he said to her, Talitha kum, which means, little girl, get up. Man, Jesus is saying the same thing to everyone who's watching right now. I don't know about you, but I'm ready to get up. Both the bleeding woman and the girl were ceremonially unclean. One was dead, one had a disease. Touch was forbidden, but Jesus reaches out and touches them both. Because you see, until you have an encounter with something stronger than you, then you'll never have that fuller, freer life. The girl lived for 12 years. Think about that. The woman suffered for 12 years. So the beginning of suffering and the beginning of life happened at the same time. When the woman's suffering started, it was the beginning of life for the girl. You see, friends, Christ's suffering was the beginning of our new life. Because he went into the tomb, you and I can come out of the tomb. In order to stop our bleeding, God was willing to come in the flesh and bleed. You want to know what a real leader looks like? You want to know someone you can really trust with your life? Luke 9:51 says, when the days drew near for him to be taken, he set his face to go to Jerusalem. The same hand that healed the woman, the same hand that raised the girl, can touch your life right now, today. Jairus thought he needed Jesus just for his daughter. Maybe you're watching this because you think this is for someone else. We always tend to think in that way, well, I don't struggle with addiction. No. Just as Jairus thought he needed Jesus for his daughter, Jesus had to show Jairus that he needed Jesus just as much. Man, people struggling with addiction aren't the only ones who need to practice these principles. All of us do. You see, Jairus' daughter was not the only one who came back to life that day. So did Jairus. Let God lead your life. Let God be in charge. Stop acting like you know everything. Let someone who knows what they're doing help you, guide you. Stop shortchanging living an unchained life. Allow that chain of ego and pride and self-obsession and control get broken by the breakthrough of humility today. I don't have to control everything. I don't have to have all the answers anymore. The day I started listening and learning is the day I started living an unchained life. God wants the same thing for you right now.
Well, once again, to be able to hear all the insights that Richie shared this evening is just incredible, because it's really all about Jesus, who's willing to go and work miracles in our lives, not necessarily according to our timetable, but yet he is willing to work a miracle in each of our lives to be able to give us the hope and the freedom that we each so desperately need. And I would encourage you, if you have time and you want to go back and look at the presentation from this evening or any of the other presentations, all those are archived on the Spartanburg Seventh Adventist Church YouTube channel. So you can be able to go there and access them at any time and share them with friends, family, anyone that you might know. So this evening, I just want to encourage you again, if you haven't gone and texted for our free book giveaway, you can do that. Richie's Darkness Will Not Overcome. You can text Unchained to the number on the screen, and we will have that drawing here in just a few minutes at the end of our session. But I'm so glad to be able to have Audrey Colleen with us this evening and sharing her story with us. I mean, just amazing, Audrey, to hear how God has brought you through your own addiction. And now that you're able to go and share the stories, your experiences with others who need to have that same hope. I mean, it's wonderful what God has done and is doing through you. So we've got some questions, I know, that we'd like to be able to go and ask, and let's see if we can bring one up on the screen right now. How can parents who have had their own addictions best help their own children who may have similar struggles? How can we do that?
Well, I think one of the most important things to draw from is that my experience is not necessarily going to be my children's experience, whether it's in addiction or not.
Okay.
And I have had to be on the other side of that as a parent. Things are great now. God delivered. There's no telling what the future holds for any of us. So I'm really grateful to be able to share the message. I think it's challenging because we have this idea that we're supposed to have some sort of control over our kids' lives, whether they're adults or children or teenagers.
Sure.
But having resources, so being in recovery doesn't necessarily mean that I know what's best for everybody's recovery pathway. I want to connect them with what will work for them. You don't have to do it the way that I did or the way that any of the some of the other people have shared here this week. But you do have to find the right pathway. And I found for myself that is most definitely coming to the feet of Jesus.
So, and I know as we were talking before we went live, you know, sometimes God can use, and many times can use somebody else to tell their story, right? That
Absolutely.
And as a parent, you know, we only have so much that our kids might listen to, but they might be willing to listen to somebody else that they're not related to and have maybe be a little bit more open to what their story has been. So
That is so true. It's really good to have people in your life that you can trust to give the same message as a parent that you would want to give, so they can tell your kids that, because they may listen to them where they won't listen to the parent.
Sure. That makes good sense. Okay, we have another question from Christy. What would you say is one of the biggest benefit or blessing that you've discovered in your recovery journey? What's the biggest blessing or benefit that you've experienced?
Wow, there's just so many, but forgiving myself, accepting forgiveness
Accepting forgiveness
for myself, and being able to share it with others. Humility and self-esteem. I know that may sound like opposites, but it's really not.
Okay.
You know, I have confidence in how I'm empowered through what God has done in my life, and not through my own power. I was so broken before. I could have never, I could have never done this. I could have done a news article. I just think it's really, really cool sometimes. I just sit back and go, if I could have planned this, like what he was sharing, if I could have planned my life, it would not have been this good.
Sure.
So I can only imagine what the future holds. If this was as good as it got, I would have a happy life.
Okay. So in other words, you couldn't have scripted it as good as it's been, right?
That's how he is.
Okay. Here's another from Sammy and Mom. What are some of the dangers of having an I know it all attitude?
Whoa, yeah, that's very dangerous. You know, it's real easy to pick that attitude up, but I think one of the major dangers in that is what Pastor Richie shared. Just when we think we know what God's healing is about, we don't, right? I don't know how he works in the lives of other people. It's really not my place to even say how they should be, if they're going to go to God or not. He's way bigger than me. He's way bigger than anything I could have, any problem that I could come up with, or any solution that I can come up with. Way bigger. And I have to remember that when I'm working with individuals in the community and at home. with my own family,
Sure.
because I don't know it all, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think, human nature being what we like to think that we can script it all for God and say, this would be the perfect way to go and take care of all this. But obviously, He has the perfect plan in mind, too.
Yes.
Okay. How do you manage cravings or triggers that you encounter?
I would definitely say in the first couple of years that probably came up more than what it does now. But you really have to get kind of reprogrammed. When it comes to cravings and triggers, you're going to face them. Facing them is normal, right? Having cravings and triggers, especially in early recovery, if I anticipate that for the rest of my life I'm never going to have a craving or never going to be triggered, I'm really setting my own self up for failure. You just have to know what to do. We have a saying is, I'm not responsible for the first thought that pops into my head. I am responsible for what I do with it. And if what you're doing with that isn't working, please keep reaching out until you find somebody that you can resonate with. Oh man, well maybe that might work for me. So a lot of it too is just limiting the amount of triggers that as many as you can. If they're internal, stay plugged into everything in the community that's healthy. If they're external, try to limit that as much as possible. Meaning, whether it's going to a grocery store, don't walk down the alcohol aisle, right? If
Sure.
it's restaurants, don't go to them, right? Some of the simple things, but I think also just letting ourselves live. Hey, I'm going to have those. It's okay. That's normal for someone who has this disease, right? It's normal for us. It's just our job to work the recovery around it.
Okay, very good. So, can you describe a moment during your recovery that you are particularly proud of?
Well, there's a lot of moments in my recovery that I am very proud of. I would say probably having all of my kids under one roof for the first night again. And I doubt I will ever live long enough to not tear up when I talk about that. I'm so humbled and grateful for that opportunity again, because I wasn't promised that. And I would say graduating drug court, which is not easy. I'm a little proud of that, right?
Sure.
Proud of what God did in my life. I graduated recently with a bachelor's degree from upstate.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. I'm a little proud of that, but I'm very proud of my kids, right? They're young, 6th, 7th grade, 11th grade. I'm proud of every day that they put one foot in front of the other in this world, and with all of the chaos that's out there, and they face challenge after challenge after challenge, and they talk to me about that. When they come to me and they are open and honest with me and talk to me, I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a special reward, right?
Yes, yes, it is.
It is. How has your definition of happiness or success changed since recovering?
I used to measure success by how much money I had. I was destined for at least a master's degree in school, and how much money I would make doing that, what the husband would look like, and all of those things. Well, my definition of happiness now is being at peace, feeling peace, giving peace, sharing peace. And there's so much power in humility that I have to remember that it's not my version of happiness, even now, that God may have for me in the future. And so I'm not perfect. Like you said, nobody is.
No one is.
And so I have to go back to really examine that. Like, what is my definition of happiness now? Well, it has nothing to do with the job. It has nothing to do with the degree. It has everything to do with the person I've created inside, that God has renewed, the who I am now.
Well, that's wonderful. So I had a question, just to kind of how do people connect with local resources in terms of either as they're battling addiction? Now, obviously, we've been flashing national hotline numbers up every night, but as far as here in Spartanburg, I mean, I know I've Googled, I've done a internet search and found some things, but what's the best? Is there like one go-to place that you can go to and find out, well, either I'm battling addiction, what are the resources, or I know someone or I have someone in my family that's addicted? In other words, where can a person go to be able to get at least the first step toward help? So.
Well, there's a few places that you can go. Some of them are well known. 12-step community. You can look up meetings online, AA, NA, Celebrate Recovery. Churches in general, Favor, Spartanburg, Favor Upstate. They are like a welcome hub for recovery for both families and individuals.
Okay.
Obviously, the Forrester Center. I'm really proud of that. I should have said that too. Not the job that defines me, but I really am proud of the work that we do. And like I said, we don't expect that everybody will go through the same pathway that I did. This is just my pathway, but I will walk you through and connect you to whatever your pathway may be. And so those are really good starts, but Google's is great.
Yeah, and of course, as we had talked before, we had gone on air, there's all kinds of behavioral addictions and resources that people can access as well. So
Yes.
I believe we have one more? Okay. We have time. Kyle is asking if you could go back to the first time experience recovery, what is something that you would have done differently to have kept you down that path? What was the missing piece?
So the first time that I got into recovery, I had a great church, but I did not know anything about the disease of addiction, which resonates with me and for most people. I wish that I had gone to 12-step meetings. I wish that I had gone to therapy. I wish that I had gone to treatment. Of course, no regrets. I'm happy with the experiences to be able to help others. But that is what I would have done differently. I believe I would have found what I just couldn't put my finger on. Right?
That support, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And education and knowing the quote unquote what was wrong with me. Right? So thank you for the question, Kyle. That is an important thing. Support has always it just makes all the difference, even today.
And it's really no different if we have some kind of health issue. Where do we go? We usually go to the clinic, the doctor, urgent care, whatever, so it's same kind of thing, right? So
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you again so much, Audrey, for being with us this evening. Appreciate it. I think do we have a winner? Tonight's winner is Christy Hood, who has won our Darkness Will Not Overcome book, and so we'll get that to Christy. We thank her for joining us this evening. Again, I want to encourage you to come back tomorrow and join us tomorrow night at 7 p.m. And please invite some of your friends and family and send them a link, text them, let them know that you really found something that's really helpful and might be encouraging to them as well. So again, you have a good evening, and we'll look forward to seeing you again real soon.